will follow.
Hello and welcome to Trinity Talk Live, water cooler conversation from a Christian perspective. I am kcoughlan, and we have got a really special episode for you here today. Let me introduce our panel. Seated to my left is Bonnie Wyant-Heisler. Bonnie has worked in different milieus. By the way, she wrote this bio for me. It's the first time I've gotten the opportunity to use the word milieu on Trinity Talk Live, so thank you for that, for giving me that excuse. She has worked in different milieus in the substance abuse field since 1988, and she's extremely passionate about helping others on their journey to recovery. Thank you very much for joining us, Bonnie.
Thank you.
And seated to my right is Corporal Dan Petz. Corporal Petz is with the Havre Grace Police Department. He is currently assigned to community policing and is the supervisor of the school resource officers. Thank you very much for joining us, Corporal Petz.
Thanks for having me.
Now, we're doing something a little different today, both in the nature of the episode and in our current event segment. We're going to put a little twist in the current event segment. I've only got one story today, and it's to tell everyone about Red Ribbon Week. This story actually starts back in 1985 when undercover DEA agent Enrique Camarena discovered a multi-million-dollar narcotics manufacturing operation in Chihuahua, Mexico. However, Camarena was kidnapped by members of the cartel, tortured, and ultimately killed. The incident opened the eyes of many Americans as to the lengths to which drug traffickers would go to maintain their power. After Camarena was found murdered, residents in his hometown of Calexico, California, donned red ribbons in his honor. The first statewide Red Ribbon campaign was started in California to honor Camarena, and it has now grown to a nationwide effort to raise awareness for alcohol, tobacco, and other drug and violence prevention. This year's Red Ribbon Week started this past week from October 23rd through 31st. And we decided here at Trinity Talk Live to make our small contribution by presenting this special episode on confronting drug and alcohol addiction. So that leads us right into our topic of the week, and our topic of the week is confronting drug and alcohol addiction. I want to get things started today by just kind of laying out some statistics that I found about the scope of the problem. Our show here is based in Harford County, Maryland. We're just outside of Baltimore. And I want to start out with some statistics about Maryland, but obviously the problem extends far beyond that, and I'll ask Corporal Petz here in a minute to give us some statistics specifically about our county here in Harford County. The number of drug and alcohol-related accidental deaths in Maryland increased for the 6th year in a row in 2016. There were 2,089 such deaths last year, which was an increase of a staggering 66% over the year before. Now, 89% of those deaths were opioid-related. The number of opioid-related deaths increased by 70% between 2015 and 2016 and has nearly quadrupled since 2010, largely due to increases in heroin and fentanyl-related deaths. Heroin-related deaths increased by 62% from 2015 to 2016, and fentanyl-related deaths more than tripled. So, to start things off today, I guess the question is, why is this happening? Why are we seeing this sudden increase? And Corporal Petz, I know you got some statistics about Harford County in particular and what we're dealing with there.
Yeah, I'll share with you the statistics in Harford County, and this is January through October 30th, so these are pretty recent statistics. And we've had 72 fatal heroin overdoses, 305 non-fatal, totaling 377. So we've been having a pretty tough time this year with the heroin and fentanyl.
Any idea why the sudden increase that we're seeing here? Really, the past year has been staggering.
Well, I would say the increase for the reasons for the overdoses and the deaths would directly be the fentanyl. The fentanyl is what's killing people when it's mixed in with the heroin. Fentanyl is a higher powered drug that is being mixed in. It's making the heroin more potent, but also killing a lot of people.
And so is that, let me ask you something, Bonnie, because he mentioned that people, they're mixing in the fentanyl, and that's giving people it's making it more powerful. First of all, tell the audience a little bit about what you do.
Well, I'm a substance abuse counselor. Right now I do supervision in the facility that I work at, but I've worked in outpatient, intensive outpatient, as well as inpatient, and we have seen a lot of increase, especially with the opioids, and I think the problem is fentanyl is definitely a problem, but I think the other part of it is it's a multifaceted kind of a problem. You have the drug companies that for a long time have been pushing drugs. People would go into the emergency rooms with very minor things that causing pain and walking out with 90 pills of oxycodone. And I think there's a lot of ignorance out there as well, especially with some professionals, doctors. Years ago I had somebody in treatment that had a problem with pills and went to the doctors because they had a problem with their arm, and the doctor gave her some samples. And, you go to the doctors and they give you samples. And he came out with them and she looked at him and said, "I can't take these." And he said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot," and gave her some more. And he comes back out with some more examples, and again, she said, "I can't take these." So it's a lot of, people need to be educated. People need to take responsibility for recovery. Recovery itself is very multifaceted. And we live in a society where we want instant results, and Suboxone is a great idea. Suboxone, of course, is a medication that can be used for opiate addiction. It helps block the high and decrease the cravings, but it's not the only thing. Therapy is really important. A lot of people don't want to do the therapy, but it really, really, truly is important. And I just think that there's a lot of problems a lot of multifaceted aspects of the problem that we're currently facing.
What would you be able to describe to people the pursuit, like Corporal Petz mentions, people putting the fentanyl in there and it increases the potency of it. How powerful is that high, and what's it like to the addicts who are chasing that?
An opioid high is unlike any other high. To give you an example, someone once said, you're having a bad day, or you're in some pain, or you're feeling a little bit down, and that one little pill is instantly going to make it okay. And that's what makes it so not popular, but so intriguing. And it is a very powerful high. And people, regardless of whether it's opiates or cocaine or marijuana or even alcohol with that high, people want to chase that initial high that they experienced the first time they used. And the issue is they're never going to get that high. And so what happens is, that you have that initial high, and then you try to get it again, and then you get low, and then it just keeps going. It gets worse and worse and worse.
Each use you get a little lower and lower and lower.
Correct. It gets lower and lower.
And that's exactly what we're hearing also, that that initial high is so powerful, but the person will never be able to achieve it again. So they have to use more and more heroin or opiates and the fentanyl, because in their mind, they once they become really involved in the heroin, death is an okay option for them, because they get sick when they don't have their drugs. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot going on with, once they actually become addicted, like she said, it is a very large process to get somebody off of the drugs.
Yeah, we just saw, just at a seminar a couple weeks ago, which I was emceeing, and I know, Bonnie, you were there. Mm-hmm. What's the gentleman's name again?
Joe Ryan.
Joe Ryan, who is the...
He's the head of the Office of Drug Control Policy in Harford County.
And he put up a really neat graphic that talks about what you guys are talking about, and I'll try to put it on the screen here, or at least my cheap imitation of it. But it basically showed, if you have your starting baseline, you take that first high and you go way up high, but then you come down kind of below that baseline a little bit. So now you take the drug the next time, but you never quite get back to the same high. But now you're going to sink even further below the baseline. It gets to the point where now eventually you're just trying to take the drug just to get back to feeling normal, because like you're saying, Corporal, it's like you start to feel sick and everything without it. Mm-hmm. It's not a feeling of normal without it. You're getting yourself worse and worse and worse. Mm-hmm. I want to make sure that we talked a little bit about fentanyl, but we've also used the word opiates a lot, and I guess we all know what that is, but I guess it's possible there's somebody out there that doesn't. Corporal, what's an opiate?
An opiate would be anything. It could be prescription medication, heroin, fentanyl. It's basically going to be something that's going to block your brain from feeling pain. Generally, it starts with the prescription drugs like the oxycodone and stuff like that, and they're mostly painkillers. So.
Do we have an issue with that in Harford County? You mentioned prescription drugs, and I know I've done a lot of reading that indicates that, I think people underestimate the dangers of prescription drugs. They almost think, an idea, it's a prescription drug, it must be safe.
Yep, and that's a big thing. So a lot of people get injuries, and or even dentists, they'll prescribe them large amounts of painkillers, and from that, they'll once they run out, if it's already set in, like the addiction into their brain, they're going to go and seek out the drugs from, family, friends, anybody they can get them from. And once that runs out, they will go to heroin.
Mm-hmm. It's cheaper, too.
Yeah, yep. And
Heroin's very
true,
cheap on
too.
the street.
Is it really?
Yes.
Absolutely. So if you run out of prescriptions and your doctor's not going to prescribe them anymore, and you're dealing with those withdrawal symptoms, which you feel like you're going to die in any kind of opiate withdrawal, or you can. Not everybody experiences that, but most people, I think, experience those terrible withdrawal symptoms. All you want is that relief, and if you can't get those pills, you're going to go to the streets and buy heroin, and that's where part of the problem lies, because a lot of times you don't know what you're getting. You think you're getting heroin, but you don't know if it's laced with fentanyl or some other dangerous substances, and that's a big issue.
Well, let me ask you this then. So I think we've kind of defined why we have the problem that we have here. So I guess the next thing we need to kind of launch into is what do we do about it? And I want to look at that from two perspectives. The first one is, let's assume that you're a parent, you're a friend, somebody in that role. You're not necessarily an addict yourself, but I want to talk first about what warning signs should you be looking at or looking for in other people that could tip you off that maybe your friend, your family member, your child is having an issue with addiction.
Mm-hmm. Well, a change in personality, a change in their appearance, definitely a change in their friends. It's those kinds of subtle things that you need to be looking for. I know that I went to a seminar not long ago at Bel Air High School, and Harford County has a trailer that's set up like a bedroom, and it's to help educate parents what to look for, and they had a lot of things hidden in this room, and they encouraged parents, to take an active role, in looking at their children's possessions in their bedrooms and so on and so forth. And one of my counselors was going through this trailer and came back to me and said to me, I couldn't believe that a parent actually said, you want me to actually look in their room? Well, yeah, you better. You better look in their room. You better be aware of what's going on. Because when people take drugs, they can become extremely manipulative, and they can make you think that everything's okay, and in actuality it's falling apart. And that's why it's so important to know who your kids' friends are, know where they're going, know who their parents are. Have those guidelines and those limitations with them. And there's nothing wrong with going through your children's belongings. It could be a matter of life and death.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
Absolutely.
I know, as being a former school police officer, generally kids aren't paying for their phone bills on their own.
Right.
Yeah, so I would always tell parents, make sure you have the passcodes to your kids' phones. Periodically go through them. If you're noticing the signs like new friends, you can physically see it also. Weight loss, not getting to sleep, scratching. A lot of things could, lead you to believe. And a lot of times parents don't want to believe that their child is on drugs. And, who would want to, think like that? But you got to recognize those signs and then get them the help as soon as possible when you're seeing it. So I would also recommend definitely going through their room. That trailer that she was speaking of, that is open to adults only. So kids can't go through it. And the police have a pretty good idea of what the signs look like, as we go to the houses a lot where, kids have overdosed. So we know what you should look for. And so it's good that we can show parents that.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you something, Corporal, about Harford County, all right, because I know that there's a number of things that Harford County is doing to try to, for prevention purposes. I know we have a program where you can bring in used or leftover prescription drugs and turn those in. I know there's a lot of education going on. Like I, for example, work with the Parks and Rec program here in the county, and we just met with the chief a couple weeks ago about trying to get some education programs started in through the Parks and Rec department. What kind of things is Harford County doing to try to help both with children or the buyback program as far as prevention that you might recommend to other programs that might be out there watching?
Right. So right off the bat, you talked about the prescription drugs. Havre Grace Police, the Maryland State Police Barracks in Bel Air, and the Harford County Sheriff's Southern Precinct all have boxes right outside that are specifically for used prescription drugs that you can come to 24 hours, 7 days a week. And then periodically through the year, we'll have a take-back day. It was actually just this Saturday, the 28th. So that's one thing that we do. The Office of Drug Control Policy they have so many resources that people could just go to their website and go through all of them. I'll speak of one thing that they're doing. November the 15th, it's the second annual Night of Conversation, where you basically speak with your child at the dinner table and you talk about drugs and ask them simple stuff like, have they seen drugs? Do they know anybody who's using them? Stuff like that. So it's something that we're not hiding.
How do you start? I guess maybe this is a question better for you, I guess, Bonnie. He mentions, sitting down with your kid at the table and talking about drugs. Now, I'm sure there are parents out there that are like, well, how do I even start that conversation? What do I say? What do you tell them?
Wow, that's a really good question.
That's why I asked it.
Again, it's like, it's like the corporal said, don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask them, have you ever seen drugs? Have you ever heard about that? What do you know? I know that in the elementary schools, they're even going back into the elementary schools and teaching children at very young ages. And I don't think there's anything wrong with teaching children at a very young age. They're learning it anyway. They're learning it either from other children. They learn it on television. When you think about what we see on television, simply in regards to, if you have a headache, take this pill. If you have an upset stomach, take this medicine. So, we're kind of conditioned in our society with that sort of mindset. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with talking to your children immediately. Don't hide stuff, be open and honest about stuff. I think we're afraid to touch all of this, and I think part of it is because, again, it goes back to the ignorance. We don't know. We don't know how to approach that. I always encourage people, don't be afraid to reach out. Don't be afraid to reach out to church groups. There's a lot of churches that have a lot of support groups, either within the church or they supply the rooms for AA, NA, all kinds of 12-step programs, Nar-Anon, Al-Anon for families. Because one of the things that people don't realize is as the addict or the alcoholic gets worse, a lot of times the family members get sick as well. Sometimes family members get sicker than the addicts themselves. I think a lot of people probably know NA and AA, but you mentioned Nar-Anon and Al-Anon. What are those? Al-Anon is another 12-step program. It's based on the 12 steps of AA, and it's for family members of basically alcoholics. Nar-Anon is a sister program to that, and it's basically for families of people that use drugs. And it's a support group, and families need that emotional support because addiction and alcoholism just basically destroys a lot in families.
I think that's really important because last week we did an episode on cancer, and one of the things we talked about there was how people kind of give short shrift and don't think about the caregivers and the families and the support that they need. The same is true of addictions and addicts. And so I know until we went to this seminar a couple weeks ago, I didn't even know that such groups existed for families of addicts. And so I think that's really great. All right, now let me move on to talking then about the addicts themselves. We've talked about family members and how to spot it in others, but now what types of things, both from a counseling perspective and from the legal system perspective, are offered and available for people, and what steps should they take if they are an addict as far as trying to get help?
Well, first of all, reach out for treatment. Don't be afraid to go into treatment. Don't be looking for that instant cure because there's no instant cure for this, okay? Suboxone, again, which is a drug that helps block the high and reduce the cravings, is a great tool. But there's, along with that is the therapy that goes along with that. I think people don't realize, when I'm teaching in group counseling, one of the things that I always try to really drive home to people that are searching for recovery is that the disease of addiction is threefold. It's physical, mental, and spiritual. And it's really important to address all three facets of that in order to get well. If you address all three of those, you have a greater chance of being successful. Recovery is a process, it's not an event. And within that process, people will take 3 steps forward and 1 step back. And that's to be expected. And I think a lot of times parents especially are looking, fix him now or fix him or her now because of that fear. And the fear is real because people die from this disease. And that's the sad part. People do die from this disease, but people also get well. And I think one of the other things that happens is we have a tendency to focus on all the negative things. We tend to focus on the failures and not the success stories, and sometimes that's hard because when you're within a 12-step community, which is anonymous, you're not going to hear a lot of that, but it does exist. There's people that have 30, 40, 50 years of recovery, and they haven't relapsed. And so I think it's really important that people don't be afraid to educate yourselves. Get out there and reach out for help.
Yep, I agree with that. And to that point, the people who have gotten clean, it's nice when they can come out and educate the public about their process, what it was like for them. And specifically, I believe that, and this is something, Havre Grace is kind of unique, where we have a school police officer in our elementary schools, our middle and high school. Nowhere else really does that. And I've always been a fan of having someone who is an addict or a family who has lost somebody speak to kids at a young age, like elementary age, and let them know how it went for them. And in my opinion, that sticks with a child, and they'll remember that, and then hopefully continue to not use drugs as they grow older. So I agree with you. I think that we should be teaching at a much earlier level about drugs and not waiting until middle school, because by 13 most kids have been offered drugs, or that's when they'll start experimenting.
Absolutely.
You know what I really like about the school resource program you mentioned? I was a criminal justice major in college, and one of the things we used to talk about is the importance of how people view the police. And I will tell you, because I've got kids in Harford County Public Schools, and it's not just that you have a resource officer in the schools. Those kids all know those resource officers, and it's almost like they have a relationship with them.
Yeah, they absolutely do. That's a good point. You're right. So they're getting that good interaction with a police officer in elementary school. They'll continue to talk to the police in the middle, high, and then when they become adults. So that's another good point about having that program.
And I was shocked because I think you were the one that told me at first that not every school in Harford County even has that.
So there is a school resource officer at every high school in Harford County, some of the middle schools, but in Havre Grace we have them at every school.
Which is, again, it gets back to what you're saying about starting early. I just think that if we can get that into the elementary schools, and I recognize there's a lot more elementary schools than there are high schools, but that's when you're going to make the biggest impact on these kids, I think.
And I give credit to our city and our chief for having that vision to want to get a good police officer in the schools at an early age to help educate the kids and just be that person that they can go to.
Absolutely. One of the other things that we have in Harford County is peer recovery coaches. That's for, basically because we're talking about a lot about children, but we need to focus also on adults,
right?
Okay, who are trying to seek treatment. And we have peer recovery coaches, which is really kind of cool because that's like a bridge between treatment and the recovering community. And I think it's really good because a lot of these people it's not all of them, are recovering. And again, it goes back to they have that experience. And people that have that experience tend to, I think, have a greater impact, because one of the things when you're talking about alcoholics and especially addicts, there's a trust issue there. It's like, I don't trust somebody that's never been through that. But when you're talking to someone who has walked down that road, they have a tendency to listen to them more. The other thing is we have opioid court in Harford County. And I had the privilege of being there briefly because it was a long morning. But there were a lot of people in that court, and it's to help them get off of opioids. And so there's a lot of things that are available to them. Vivitrol is another drug that helps with opioid addiction. Vivitrol is a shot that they give people it blocks the high and helps them reduce the cravings. And so we've had some success with that as well. And so there's all kinds of resources out there. It's about making them known and letting people not be afraid to reach out. Getting over that stigma of addiction and alcoholism, because it still exists. People want people to get clean and they want them to get sober, but not in my neighborhood because of the stigma that's attached to it.
What do we do for someone who is addicted? And I mean, you've talked about, you need to be able to seek out treatment. We've got all these different programs. But I can picture somebody out there watching this right now saying, that's great to know that's out there, but how do I get hooked up to them?
Call the local health department. Call your insurance company. You can start with your insurance company saying, hey, I've got a son or a daughter or myself, and I need help, and they'll be able to tell you what's in their network and what's covered. You may need inpatient, you might need outpatient, but call the health department, call your insurance company, get online and look things up.
Yeah, call your local police department. We can
Yeah.
gladly get you any of the resources that you would need or get you in touch with the people who have them. Speaking on that point, just another thing that I didn't mention earlier, but Harper County and I believe the state of Maryland has a blanket prescription for Narcan. So if you're a family member, you can go to any pharmacy, get that, so you would have it on hand just in case your loved one overdosed and you needed to, give that to them to wake them up. And Narcan is basically a drug that is used to counter the opiate. So if you use too much heroin, it could stop you from breathing, and that would allow you to regain your breath.
So it's like an emergency type of...
Yep. And then just on that also, law enforcement has changed, so we can't arrest out of this. We know that. So the detention center has a program now for recovery. We will not charge somebody when they've overdosed. So when we get to the scene, we would of course take the drugs and the paraphernalia and put them to be destroyed, but we're not charging people when we come across that. And that's a big thing that the public needs to know, that we're not going to charge somebody. So if your friend overdoses, please call us so we can get there and help them live.
Yeah, that's extremely important, because I think the fear of of that can prevent people from getting the help that they need sometimes.
Absolutely.
So, well, we need to wrap things up here, so I guess I'll open it up. Anything else that we didn't mention that you guys had in your brains that you wanted to make sure you got in today that we didn't get to?
Probably, but I won't think of it right now. I'll probably think of it 10 minutes after we wrap up.
Then we'll just all come back, as long as we haven't torn the set down. You come run back into the room. Ken, wait, I forgot something. Sit back down again. So, all right, excellent. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. That's a lot of information for 30 minutes, I think. So, hey, hopefully we were able to help some of you out there. If you do have any questions, send us a message. I'm going to go ahead and put my email address in the show notes of this particular program, and so that if anybody has any questions, I just want to make it even easier for people with this show. If you have any questions as a result of anything we've talked about, you can go ahead and shoot me an email, and I can get you hooked up with somebody that might be able to have more information, whether it be one of these two folks or someone else, okay? If you did like this video, go ahead and please click the like button. That's a thumbs up button right here on our YouTube page, especially for this episode. YouTube uses a formula: the more likes, the more comments that a video gets, the more likely it is to be served up to other people, and more people that are going to be able to see it. So especially an episode like this, that's really, really important for us to get the word out there. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Subscribing is not only going to keep you up to date on all the videos that we put out there, but also makes it a lot easier for you to find our channel, whether you're using your phone, your tablet, your Apple TV, Roku, whatever. Obviously, you've got a little tab for just your subscriptions, and that way you can find our channel again really easily without having to search it out. Trinity Talk Live, we also have our own Facebook page. It is at Trinity Talk Live Podcast. Go ahead and give that a like. We do post things on there about what we have coming up in future episodes. Also, we have a post on there for every episode we put up there, so if you have any questions about an episode, you could comment on that episode post, and that'd be another way of getting in touch with us. We're going to be back again next Tuesday. Again, we're going to be a very special episode, but in a very different way next Tuesday than what this one was. We're actually going to be taking a little bit of a lighter turn next week. We're disposing of the whole panel discussion format. My guests next week are going to be my family. For those of you that have seen the show before or were watching it back in August, you might remember my daughter Sarah was on an episode about what it's like to be a Christian in high school. You've heard us talking just about every week about my brilliant and lovely wife who's working behind the camera. Well, she's actually going to come in front of the camera next week, along with she's like, never mind, I don't want to tell you what she's doing behind camera right now, but she's going to be in front of the camera along with my daughter Sarah's going to be back, and you're going to get to meet our 10-year-old son James as well. And what we're going to be doing next week is we're about to launch into the holiday season, and I often hear a lot of people talk about, getting caught up in all the hubbub and the hustle and the bustle of the holidays and maybe losing the spiritual aspects of it and what the meaning is supposed to be behind them. And so we're going to show you some suggestions next week about what we call Christian holiday traditions for your home. Things you can do in your home that'll be fun, involve the family, but also keep the focus where it should be. And it's not just Christmas. We're talking Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Easter. We're going to be working through all of those. That's next week. It's a show you're not going to want to miss. So, That goes on. That episode will go up just like every episode, Tuesdays at noon on the Trinity Talk YouTube channel. I would like to once again thank Bonnie Wyant-Heisler, thank Corporal Dan Petz. I think this was a great episode. I really, really value you guys, your input today. Thank you for joining me, and thank you to all of you, and God bless.
In your word we will